So one of the things that I learned last year was that I am capable of leaving my dahlias in the ground over winter, and it caused major anxiety for me last winter because I was very concerned that they were just going to all rot in the ground because I didn't get the time in autumn to dig them up. So I was stressing about them leaving them in the ground, but I found that not a lot of them died. Some did, but I filled them in with the cuttings that I bought and were delivered in the spring. So I think I probably have lost a similar amount by storing them in the past as well. So the benefits outweigh the costs basically, because I don't want to spend a few days digging up tubers in the clay soil. And as you know, I like to try out new things and test how they go, and also I like to put in no-till or no-dig practices on the farm, or I'm trying to do that as best as I can at the moment. So this year again was another really busy year, and I knew for a fact this year that I was going to leave my dahlias in the ground, but I wanted really to mulch them really well and prevent them from getting too wet over winter. So it isn't actually the cold that kills the tubers in the ground or that rots the tubers, it's the wet. So they really don't like being in the wet ground as a Mexican native plant. So I've got 2 beds here that I'm going to start working on. It's now January, so obviously they've been killed off for a couple of months. It hasn't been too wet this winter, so I'm hoping that a lot of the damage hasn't already been done. So I haven't even trimmed the stems back from them, so I'm gonna trim off the stems, put the stems into this wheelbarrow, then I'm gonna pull up the weed membrane, lay the stems back on the soil to put that goodness back into the soil, and then mulch with thick layer of compost. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do after that, because I don't have any kind of tarps or anything that's not permeable to the rain, but I was hoping that the compost, thick layer of compost on top, would kind of prevent the majority of the water from getting into the soil. So I just need to think about that for a bit and see what we come up with. Because I've burnt holes in the weed membrane, there's kind of like 30 holes in each sheet of weed membrane, so I could maybe cover the individual holes or something like that, but I'm not sure just yet. So I'll probably have a think about it whilst I'm clearing out the stems on the beds and see what we come up with. So I've just dug up this dahlia because it had a dock root next to it that I wanted to dig up, and it's looking really healthy and it's nice and firm. It hasn't rotted or anything, so I'm just going to plant that back into the soil once I've dug up the dock and get to mulching. There's also tons of worms in this soil, which is really good. They seem to love being around the dahlias. I think if there's anything that's kind of rotting away, they like to eat at the dahlia tubers. God knows how my irrigation has ended up like this in the middle of my bed. That's not ideal, obviously. So I've just decided to go and grab a fork from the other field because the soil surface is kind of looking a bit compacted because of the weed membrane, and although I don't walk on these beds, my dogs do, and the combination of kind of the weed membrane and the rain on the weed membrane, etc., does cause some compaction eventually. So I'm just going to see whether I can go in between the dahlias and kind of give a little bit of a forking over. It's like So I'm not forking it over, I'm just kind of acting like I'm broad forking it. So yeah, that's one of the things that is on the list of things to do in the next few weeks. I'm hoping that Rob is going to weld me together a DIY broad fork, and that will just start to open up the soil, add a bit of oxygen and nitrogen into the soil and help to keep those microbes happy in the soil. So I'm hoping this is going to be quite easy, because the soil does look like a nice dark colour, like it's got lots of organic matter in it. So I'm hoping that after a few years of not tilling these beds, that it's going to be not too difficult to fork and raise up. So if you saw my video the other week from it was called Come to Work With Me on My Flower Farm, I tried to broad fork the polytunnel, and it was just like concrete. So I'm hoping that in comparison this is going to be a lot easier. So I'm going to broad fork, or just fork, and then I'm going to start piling the debris back onto the bed and then compost. So I just decided to chop up the dahlia stalks a little bit, just to help with that process of breaking them down. And I'm just wondering, when I put the compost on, I wish I'd brewed up some JMS, some microbial solution, but so I'm actually just listening to a video by Better Mountain Farm at the moment to see whether using Jadam liquid fertiliser might be a good idea to use as a soil drench. So we'll see what they say. If not, I might not do it just in case. I would normally use JLF as a foliar feed, but if it's got good microbiology in it, I don't see why I can't use it as a soil drench just to inoculate the soil. So it's the day after yesterday when I prepped this bed and got it all finished, and I had a bit of an epiphany last night, which was encouraged by somebody that I was chatting to on Instagram, and they mentioned that they were mulching their dahlias with sheep wool. So I was like, I've got bags full of alpaca wool in my workshop. So as you can see, the dogs are very interested in it down there. I'm gonna try mulching the tops of the holes with alpaca wool, and hopefully I can just kind of like slot it under the holes, and the weed membrane will keep that in, and hopefully that will help with the slug and snail problem that we had major problems with last year. So I believe that slugs and snails don't like the texture of wool on their foot, so hopefully that will deter them from the dahlias, because last year the slugs and snails really set back the dahlias, and we didn't really get any good ones until late on in the season. So hopefully that will help in some way. I'm not sure whether I'll actually have enough alpaca wool, but we'll just go as far as we can with it and we'll see what happens. I do not have high hopes that that is going to stay like that, and I think the birds will probably end up using it as bedding as well, but that's good for them anyway. Can you tell which alpaca's wool that I'm using, by the way? So I've got 2 flower beds mulched with compost and alpaca wool, and I've got how many beds left? 1, 2, 3 beds left to mulch. And what I think I'm actually going to do with this bed behind me, I put cuttings in this bed last year that I bought online, and they have bulked up into tubers now, so they've still got the labels in, unlike many of my other tubers. So I think I might actually check out those labels and dig those up in the next week or so, put them on heat mats to get them shooting up and take some cuttings from those tubers. And if you want to know how I'm doing that, then check out the video in my description, and also I'll put it in the banner up here. And that's from a couple of years ago now, but still relevant because that is exactly the way that I would still take cuttings from my dahlias. So if you want to know how that's done, then please check that video out. I hope you enjoyed watching this video about what I'm going to be doing with my dahlias this year, or what I have done with my dahlias this year. I'd love to know what you guys are doing with your dahlias. Do you leave them in the ground or do you dig them up? So yeah, let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you next time.